I want to make sure that we are making best use of everybody's time. It's right at 2 o'clock. I see that we have several people calling in today. So I'm just going to go ahead and get started with today's presentation and curriculum review of the industrial equipment technology. I do ask, we're going to mute everybody on the call. And if you do have specific questions, to use the chat window and I can address those questions. And then feel free to also, as we use this GoToMeeting platform, to input your name so that way I know exactly who it is that's asking the question. You do have the ability to keep yourself anonymous if it is a question that you would prefer to do so. But it would help, for this whole process in order to at least identify knowing who each individual caller is on the we'll call this a webinar / workshop. Okay, so moving right along, and just making sure, for those of us that are in the room, I didn't hear what it was. Is that the TV talking, or is that someone's phone?
No, that's just...
Okay. Okay, so as far as the workshop details for this workshop, those dialing in, as I mentioned, will be on listen-only mode. I please encourage you to use the chat window. This workshop is being recorded, and every attendee will be sent a recording link or a file of this recorded. Hopefully that will help to keep this conversation going, and those who unfortunately were not able to make today's meeting fully engaged and easily onboarded with the discussions that we've had from today's meeting. As a reminder, I do think that the work that we're doing here as far as curriculum review, specifically as it relates to that, I do strongly encourage that, maybe we analyze this as a team, this GoToMeeting platform today. I think from some of the research that I've done since the last time we met in late January, strongly suggests that if we can make it a point to meet face-to-face, but realizing that we do have several organizations and stakeholders a part of this work that are coming from long distances. So I think that's something that we're going to have to navigate through and discuss to make sure that we are developing the strong relationships that are needed to really dive into curriculum review, and also establishing the proper protocol and systems to help address the need of what we're actually here meeting on. With that, I guess we're going to try to make an attempt at doing some introductions. I would like to first start with those in the room here at the MTI facility at JCC, starting with my left. Todd, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Good morning, Todd Tranum. I'm President and CEO of the Chautauqua County Chamber of Commerce and Executive Director of the Manufacturers Association.
I'm Emily Reynolds, and I'm the Executive Director at Cornell Cooperative Extension.
Carl Moody. I'm a dairy processing specialist with Cornell Cooperative Extension.
Chuck Dispenza, Maintenance Manager at Monofrax LLC.
Okay, and I'm Justin Hanoff. You'll hear more from me throughout the day. I also want to just jump to the phones here, give a one-time opportunity for everybody that's joined us via the webinar to introduce themselves, starting with Michael. We can see he's turned himself off. Well, I'm going to go ahead and just introduce, I guess, the folks on the phone. I don't know if all of them have audio features. It looks like on my end that some of them might not. So with us on the webinar, we do have Jean Schrader. She is the Dean of STEM for Jamestown Community College. Mike Bolton from SolEpoxy. Melissa Himes from Ring Precision and Producto Corporation up by the airport here in Jamestown, New York. We do have Grant Umbarger. He is the Continuing Ed Director at Jamestown Community College. Gerald Posey from Cummins Engine. And then, as I mentioned, we do have several other callers who have yet to identify themselves. So we'll move forward right from here. Thanks, everybody, for coming once again. I want to reemphasize who the Chautauqua County Education Coalition is and what we're all about. So the Education Coalition has grown over the past 3 years to incorporate over 90 participating stakeholders throughout Chautauqua County, totaling 60 organizations that are part of the Chautauqua County Education Learning System. and we're analyzing that. We're analyzing that learning system to make sure that it's currently meeting the needs throughout Chautauqua County. The mission is to align resources and build capabilities in the evolving workforce requirements of the community. We're currently focused on 3 specific strategic focus areas. The first, benchmark and improve kindergarten readiness. The second being identifying middle school and the high school career pathways that connect both to healthcare and manufacturing. Those are the 2 largest industries here in Chautauqua County. I think we're working on a little bit of a piece of that today. But the third one is coordinating and aligning offerings around cohort training for immediate in-demand occupations, which really is, I think, the energy as to why we've pulled together this group to meet specifically on industrial equipment technology and industrial maintenance as it pertains to the Chautauqua County workforce and developing that pathway into the workforce. As I mentioned, my name is Justin Haniff. I'm the director for the Chautauqua County Education Coalition. Just wanted to highlight maybe some of my previous work. I have been the Dream It, Do It coordinator in Chautauqua County for the past 3 years. It's a workforce development initiative specifically designed to engage the future generations on careers in manufacturing. We were able to grow that program significantly over the past 3 years, and that's definitely a piece of what we're doing here as part of the Education Coalition. Excited for what we're going to be able to accomplish through the Education Coalition and through this platform of bringing together key community stakeholders such as yourselves to have these types of conversations. So wanted to refocus everybody and try to put the grand challenge in front of us once again as to why we're meeting today. It's really to develop an understanding for the workforce needs around industrial maintenance. Thank you for filling out your surveys and providing some feedback as to identifying the core competencies as you see it in your facilities around industrial maintenance. What are the top 3 needed in-demand occupations in-demand skills for an industrial equipment technologist? And through these discussions that I hope that we have today, how we're going to figure out how to collaboratively identify opportunities to try to increase enrollment here at JCC, along with improve retention of the students that are currently going through these programs. And so forth. I did find a quick quote that I thought pertained to some of the discussions that we're having around this concept. It was from an article in The Economist. Automating a particular task so that it can be done more quickly or cheaply increases the demand for human workers to do the other tasks around it that have not been automated. So I think that was kind of a little funny note, just kind of talking about how the jobs that support the manufacturing processes like an industrial maintenance position are critically important in today's economy. And that's just emphasis there. So for today's objective, what I want to get accomplished is that I want to examine the feedback that all of you provided through the survey, and that is going to relate back to the industrial equipment technology curriculum that is already on the books at Jamestown Community College. And thank you to Gene Schrader for providing that information and those links so that the business representatives that are a part of this conversation could access that. And then it's really we need to get to a point where we can start developing an alignment, making sure that the curriculum and the needs that that all of you identified as business leaders are embedded in the program currently. And that students that currently are going through this program are coming out with the knowledge and the skills of what they need to know. We want to make sure that we're starting there, because if we currently are not in alignment from a training perspective, then we need to fix those issues first. Not to say that there are those issues, but we just wanted to try to help identify if there are any gaps before we sort of put the focus around the recruitment and the retention strategies efforts. So today we're going to be reviewing our business input, synthesize the response. I have created an Excel spreadsheet that incorporates all of the individual responses from each company. And then if we can synthesize those down, maybe there's some similarities in some of the responses, summarize some of those responses into buckets. I also have a couple examples of how some other organizations in some different areas across the country have done some curriculum review processes like this that we can take a look at and decide whether or not we want to, mimic what they've done or go in a different direction. I think that's going to be up to you guys. My anticipated next steps would be that after we identify or summarize the responses, that we are going to then have Jamestown Community College faculty cross-reference the results to the student outcomes that are, as part of the master course syllabus. So I've said a lot there. I do want to at least open it up to any questions that you may have, both for those in the room here in person, but also to those online. Like I mentioned, I want to draw your attention to the chat window. If you do have any questions, I'd be more than happy to reiterate those back to the full group. Okay, no questions to this point, so I want to continue moving forward. Just reiterate our process of engagement as to how we completely got started with this whole thing. So we did, this transpired from the Employment Readiness Summit that Jamestown Community College held. Todd, as the head of the Manufacturer Association, and Katie Geist at the Workforce Investment Board helped facilitate a meeting that, out of that meeting, it was identified that, there is this strong need for industrial maintenance. So we used this process that was, given to us from Southeast Indiana, our partners through the Coalition for Coalition Building, and we're following this process right along to, have all of you in the room and work forward. I will say that the process is working. As you can see from our stakeholder map, we do have a strong amount of support from a variety of different private, public, and social sector organizations that are all coming together to work on this issue. So I appreciate, like I said, I appreciate again all of your time, energy, and effort into analyzing this curriculum and for these discussions. So for the one example here that we have so far that we did get from our buddies down in Southeast Indiana, was an example of a crosswalk, and this curriculum review process happens in a way that basically just identifies whether or not that core competency is being exposed into some of the classes and the programs. So for example, and for those of you that are actually in the room, there's a copy, a handout, in addition to the PowerPoint right here. You can see it right, let's grab here. Here's a copy of the crosswalk, and you can kind of see it. I also incorporated it into the PowerPoint to try to make it a little bit more readable. So the business, I guess, feedback would be the actual tasks that were identified as important, and we're going to get to our specific feedback here in a minute, but they did break it out into 4 different categories: electrical, mechanical, pneumatics, and hydraulics. Those of you that are calling in, we'll get to the several pages here on the PowerPoint, but I also did send you this information via email the other day. And then they walk it across to the courses that are being offered at their local college, so automotive, electronics, welding, machining. And if that task is being exposed in one of those 4 programs, then they mark it off as an X. So at least it identifies that, okay, here's a business need, here's an actual skill set that is needed to be trained on, and they are getting some exposure to that in this specific course. Any questions with that? Does that make sense for everybody?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. As opposed to the other way we could look at this, so as you're flowing through this chart, and they have specific tasks, the other way that we can kind of go through this would be through a skills validation process, which is a little bit more intensive and a little bit more involved in the sense that they go through all these inputs. So if you look at that same crosswalk for now, because I don't want to jump to the other Excel that I brought up or that I put together. they would go through and from a business perspective rate each task on a scale of 1 to 4. And what this would then do would be to sort of prioritize the importance of those tasks from an industry perspective. So if a task got a rating of 3 or higher, then that would be a high priority item in making sure that those individuals for an industrial equipment technology certificate or whatever the program may be, those are the critical tasks that they need to be coming out the door with in order to walk into an occupation and fill that open. As you can tell, though, that this would require us to kind of go back and do some sort of rating, because right now the survey that everybody on the phone and both everybody in here filled out was just to identify the task, so to speak. So we didn't really do any rating system. I think there are benefits. I will bring up hang on, let me just do this both for the folks on the phone. There are benefits to both, and I think we could, if we don't feel like we need to go through that amount of effort when it comes to the review, I'd leave that up to you to decide. But it would take a little bit more legwork to collect some more of that information if we did decide that we need to do a review process. Let me see if I can pull that up really quick. Hang on. Bear with me. Oh. Why isn't that working? Okay, so you can see here, this would be the more advanced skills validation process of curriculum review, where on the left-hand side, what I've done is I've taken all of your individual responses and listed them individually. So as we asked for, in an entry level, we asked each employer to fill out the top 3 core competencies that were needed for an industrial equipment technologist at that level. If we decided to kind of go forward with the crosswalk, all we would have to do then is just request the JCC cross-reference their student learning outcomes for each course as it pertains to the identified core competencies that were brought up by you, the employer. So really all we would need to then accomplish today would just be to summarize maybe some of this data. For example, there were several responses when it came to soft skills. They were listed a couple of times. Maybe we wanted to get a little bit more specific as to what those soft skills were. I leave that up to you. Example, blueprint reading, technical skills, mechanical aptitude. We might be able to combine some of those descriptions into one heading. So this is where the real work is going to come in today, and as we discuss these types of topics. But before we kind of can move forward there, I just wanted to throw out a couple of different concepts, a couple of different ways that we could go about analyzing this curriculum and really have some good solid discussion here. Chuck, I would lean to you a little bit to see what your thoughts were.
Okay, I recognize a few of the things that I had put in there. Safety training is one of the things that every company has to go through as we bring in new employees. And if they had a pre-understanding of what was going on, it would help them understand when every company does their own safety training based on what they do. Given some type of training course, especially like electrical training, if every student that came out had a basic 70E training course, which is an 8-hour course, they would understand arc flash in a much more broader sense and how actually dangerous it is than just teaching some basic electrical safety. When you see it presented by a professional, it's very eye-opening, the potential energy hazards that exist out there. That's one of them. Also, every maintenance department, and I speak all for maintenance, every maintenance department operates cranes, lift trucks, and so on. If they could come in with a modicum of lift truck training, so they know how to get on one, the difference between electric and a propane model, what the safety features are on each one, that they know they have to use seat belts, horns, so on and so forth. Things like that go a long way to our training programs. They can come in, and yes, they still have to go through your training program, but they're ready for it, and they don't think that it's just another necessary evil, that they come in with the right mindset that safety is so important in manufacturing, that it's taught at a very early level, and those things should be taught all the way through. Then I also put on there, because a lot of this was somewhat asked for the manufacturing, industrial manufacturing, as opposed to maintenance. And there's a big difference between maintenance welding and production welding. Here at JCC, you have some beautiful machines. You'd never use that in a maintenance shop. We'd never get the glory of having one of those machines. We use small suitcase welders, TIG and MIG welders that aren't very large. You weld, everything is out of position, everything is oily and dirty, unless you're lucky enough to find that thing that you can build in the shop. When you go out on the floor, you're 40 feet in the air in a basket with a harness tied off, welding upside down on a transport pipe. So that type of maintenance welding isn't the same as any type of bench welding. It is hard to recreate, but those things are skills that we look for, that, just putting somebody up in the air is intimidating. When you lift them 80 feet up in the air or 40 feet up in the air in a man lift, their perspective changes as far as how comfortable they are up there. Once they get up there, some of them, they don't even want to move, for quite a while. So exposing them to certain things like that lets them know what's going to be expected of them when they do get to, the maintenance field. Other than that, there's a lot of things that up there that relate real well to maintenance. And again, I'm always looking exactly towards the maintenance field and what we're looking for as far as different things that people can come in with. An understanding of bearings, the different types of roller bearings, ball bearings, thrust bearings, and how they work, why they have rubber seals, why they have steel seals, why there's no seals, why there's seals on one side and not the other. Those type of understandings help them when they take a gearbox apart. They can look at it and say, oh, I understand. They got a rubber seal on one side because they're putting grease to the other side. That's where the lube is coming from. Without it, it can't be lubricated. If all of a sudden they pull a gearbox out and there's a seal on both sides and they say, well, this thing can never get the lube it deserves, why is it there? So they understand the use of seal technology and bearing technology, which now in our universe is expansive. My maintenance department alone probably has 800 to 1,000 different bearings in stock, and I'm by no means a large user of them. So there's so many different things out there for them to study. Those are some of the bigger things that I have. A good understanding for electricians on practical use of schematics. How to tell the difference between a 24 volt system for controls and a 480 volt system for power for motors. They're two separate sections of the same paper. But when you go, you don't always have the luxury to look at a new piece of equipment. You're looking at old books that are 20 years old. Some of them are in German, and they don't say this is the 24 volt system. They say P. Well, now you have to know that this is your control side. Now you have to go try and find what their voltage is. Could be 24, could be 18 volt. So you have to just be able to disseminate that and find out how you're troubleshooting it. You know, if you have a control and the motor says, I'm not going to go, but you have power, well, then you know it's not the power to the motor, it's in the control system somewhere. So if you're blowing a control fuse, you know that you're not dealing with a 480 volt motor fuse. Different things that you need to be able to understand what you're looking at. And I say this because this happened to some of my more seasoned people just recently, that they didn't realize what they were looking at in the thing. So as you bring younger people up and into the system, those are the kind of things that make them easily valuable out of the box. When they can go and they can look at that and understand what they're looking at and know how to look at they don't get the chance to look at old books, old prints. We have prints that look like they were on parchment paper, and looking in file cabinets. Not very much as, at most of the place I've been to, which is steel industry, heavy industry, there's not much on computers to look at for prints. They're all in drawers and file cabinets and big laid out print cabinets, and you have to know how to look down through those and find what you need. Expanded view diagrams and part books, and pull those out and know what you're looking at in that expanded view. So print reading, aside from blueprint reading, actual print reading is key. And I don't think that they get the exposure to the used equipment. I'd like to see them where they could, and I talked to Bill Andrews and told him if he spoke with the members of MAST and they could collect old gearboxes. Doesn't matter if they worked on broken gearboxes, and let the college have them, so somebody could actually take a gearbox apart and put it back together and see all the pieces and spacers and gears and everything that's in there, because the gearboxes run our industry. We have a gearbox on almost everything we have. And so things like that to me, are what seems to be important, what seems to be lacking when I hire somebody.
Yeah. Thank you for that, Chuck. Yeah, and I'd appreciate to hear any feedback. We did open up the calls. I think that it would make maybe this discussion a little bit easier if those of you that are phoning in and also on the webinar here and do want to chime in as to what your suggestions are of how we move forward. I think we've done a good job at least identifying what the important skills are for an individual for this occupation. What we just need to do is to make a determination as to how we're going to move forward in making sure that JCC's program and JCC's faculty and staff has everything that they need from an industry standpoint to best assess their current curricula and if it's providing the student outcomes that we're looking for.
Yeah, hey Justin, this is Grant. If I could just chime in really quick.
We can hear you great, Grant.
Okay, good, thank you. And hello everyone. So as Justin said, my name is Grant Umberger. I'm the director for the Center for Continuing Education at JCC. So we are the non-credit division of the college. We offer customized training, soft skills, safety, all of these things that I was looking at through the results. And so to couple with, I was listening to Chuck, and so for example, the curriculum, the credit-based curriculum, I also like to say we're kind of complementary to that, meaning we can help individuals on the front end to get prepared to enter this type of program or instruction. So we have math courses, non-credit math courses that are very affordable, reading, writing courses. We could, if safety and some other components of training aren't ingrained in the credit coursework, we can always add that in as a non-credit training. With the safety and the OSHA, we do have the ability to offer OSHA certified type training. So that 70E that Chuck mentioned, we could do forklift training, we can do crane training, we can do an OSHA 10-hour general industry standards for individuals entering, if that helps. So I'm really, I'm glad to be a part of this conversation, but I'm really kind of seeking input from the other manufacturers about if there are some pieces of the credit curriculum, if there's some pieces in there that you think is missing, whether it's certifications or if it's just front-end things. For example, we also do blueprint reading, different things like that that would get individuals up to snuff to enter credit coursework. So I just want to say that, you know, I think the college, along with our other partners, I think we're pretty well positioned to be able to lay out and map some of this curriculum with your assistance.
Great, yeah, thank you for that, Grant. And we also do have a comment on the chat box here. So Mike Bolton from SolEpoxy just wanted to reiterate that they do, they thought that Chuck presented a well representation of the same issues that they face also at SolEpoxy, and that the bottom line is that most everyone has the same needs, which is great. Yeah, thank you for that input, Mike. You know, so I think that's where it brings us here to today, and I think, you know, Grant, thank you for also providing your information, because, you know, what we really just need to do is synthesize the feedback that all of you presented, because ultimately I think we need to get to a point where then Gene Schrader can take a look at their current curriculum and just cross-reference it to the master course syllabus and the student outcomes that each of their courses has. So if I'm putting my academic hat on, we need to provide her with, you know, industry information that is pertinent, so she can then take back and cross-reference it with those student outcomes. What I need to just understand from all of you industry leaders is that, are we comfortable with just moving forward in a crosswalk that just identifies whether or not students get exposure to those programs and to those skills? I should say, that's a better word for it, skills. Or do we need to take it to a level where we're ranking each skill and really doing a little bit more due diligence to identifying the most, you know, high priority skills that are listed, you know, that we can then kind of get into kind of this ranking system or this you know, skills graph where, you know, each has an average and we sort of identify gaps that way. I guess would be my question.
I think it needs to be a combination.
Okay.
In other words, they probably need to, once we set what you want, they need to touch on all of them, but then there are others that, like you say, need to be ranked higher and get a little bit more exposure to it. It's going to require a little bit more time involvement than just, you know, bringing forth what it is and showing them and having a little bit of exposure as to getting a clear understanding of, you know, maybe in a testing situation, so that you understand that they understand what you've talked about, you know.
I would agree with that. I don't know if you need 4 rankings or if you just need 2. You need, like, exposure and you need, like, knowledge.
Right.
Like or maybe there's 3. Maybe there's also that hands-on experience with this or something like that. You know, I think through the discussions about safety and I think like the troubleshooting skills, I don't know, I'm looking through the syllabuses that already exist. I think a handful of them specifically mention safety. Maybe one of them mentions like troubleshooting skills, you know, and maybe that's just because it's like a culture thing. I would assume it's a culture thing where it's like in every topic we talk about safety and we talk about troubleshooting, and so maybe that's why it's not specifically mentioned in some of the syllabuses, but I don't know, looking at this example, I think it's kind of interesting that some of them are very generic, and some of them, maybe it's a different person in the meeting who's very specific about, I want, replacing way covers. I don't have any idea what a way cover is, but that seems like a pretty specific skill to me. Drilling lap threaded holes seems like a specific skill, but then under electrical input devices, output devices seem like very generic terms, right?
Yes.
It was probably, there was a Chuck in a meeting, there was a Carl in a meeting, and Carl said output devices, and, so I guess it probably just also depends on the specific skill, whether it matters. The one that I remember reading, but I don't see it on the list there, was a, good manufacturing practices awareness. I don't know if that was maybe it's down under specialized.
It might be, yeah.
How those fit. And again, that would be possibly an example of, well, this is just something we want to do.
Lean manufacturing.
Exposure. I was thinking, because obviously I'm a food guy, so, exposure to doing, maintenance or this kind of work in a food manufacturing atmosphere.
Right.
Like, do you need to spend a semester on it? No. But I know when people come in, one of the questions, what do you know about working in food?
Sure.
Right. All you want the person to be able to say is, I got some exposure, right? You'd prefer them to say, I've done this for years. It's great, but something to check the box.
Okay, so I think for our purposes to try to continue to move this discussion forward, maybe it would be worth us kind of completing both of these efforts. I think from this document that we have created here, we could easily do the crosswalk and have JCC faculty sort of, at their leisure, take a look at each individual line item here, and rather than sort of synthesizing it down and leaving anything out, addressing each one that was identified from an individual employer standpoint, and making an X next to the course or the program offering where that is being provided exposure. I do think, though, as you mentioned, and as Chuck, as you talked about too, that it would provide us some added benefit to then be able to prioritize each one of those, and then specifically kind of get into a little bit more in-depth detail as to. So for the example, if I kind of slide down the spreadsheet here, these are all the courses that one individual would have to take in order to complete the Industrial Equipment Technology Certificate Program here at JCC. And for example, once that skill set or core competency has been identified, the T with the blue would label, yes, they've covered electrical safety thoroughly in, ELC 1200, that's the specific course. If they only got a little exposure, we could, highlight it with an E with a yellow or so forth, and kind of create a little bit more colored, detailed map to identify maybe where some of those gaps are, where, and also, I posed this question to JCC as well, obviously, as they're developing the coursework, but hopefully this would help to try to pull out where there might be gaps, and if there does need to be new curriculum developed to meet those needs.
Yeah, when I looked at the syllabuses, I couldn't pull out, on their electrical safety, it said they had electrical safety, but it really didn't draw out what it was. What did they cover? Maybe I misread it or didn't see it, but it didn't show, did they do a 70E training? Do they do bonded grounding training? It was hard to tell what they actually did cover in it. And that would be nice once we established that they do cover it, if we could look and see what it is that their curriculum does cover. It broad brushes a lot of it, and it's there, but it's hard for somebody in my position to find out exactly how they cover it.
Sure, and I just want to make sure that, and these are the documents that you're referencing, Chuck. This is the master course syllabus. I just want to make sure that everybody had that in front of them. Okay, and it was, and from that information, you're still a little bit unclear as to what is being focused on?
Right, like it says basic concepts, basic circuits, circuit components, parallel. There's nothing in here on 1200 that says it was safety,
Yeah.
unless it's under
I
basic
think the
concepts.
next one, the electrical, there's like an electrical motor one or something, right? That talks about safety. But it's not, it's like you say, it doesn't. Yeah, maybe it's that one. Safety in the workplace.
Where am I? Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Safety in the workplace. It's the topic outline, but it doesn't say, I don't know what they cover for safety. Is it, honestly, is it steel-toed shoes? Is it safety glasses? Is it PPE? There's a variety of different things, and even in the food industry a lot. I mean, everybody has different things they need to cover.
Sure.
And I just would like to get a better picture of what it is they cover so that we can talk about it more. And if they do cover 70, well, then we know we have that, like the lift truck training, the crane training that you can do. It doesn't take a large crane to teach somebody how to run one. The small it's the exact same principle, small to large. But things like that, I couldn't really get out of the syllabuses. You couldn't drill down. When I looked at them, you couldn't drill down to see what is part of that safety in the workplace.
Okay.
And that would be good for us to see on my side, so we could compare it to what our programs are at our factories and bring it back and say, this is what we really need so they understand it better.
Okay.
And so then that kind of asks you to make this as detailed as possible, right? So that they
Right.
have more check boxes to check.
Yeah.
Right. So which would almost tell me that we don't want to necessarily summarize this down a little bit.
No,
I would
want to keep it as itemized as possible.
and then
yeah,
later,
grouping,
yeah.
I'm sure, but
Right. So maybe we come up with categories like they did in this crosswalk with, we did come up with categories from our last meeting where we, decided to have entry level, advanced level, and specialized. But do we also want to create subcategories where we're breaking up the skills into, like they did here, electrical, mechanical, pneumatics, and hydraulics?
I think it might make it easier to look at so that we could sort it out and see what it was, so you can kind of focus on one section at a time instead of, we've kind of bounced around up
Right.
between mechanic and electric. See if we can sort those out more like this, and then you can kind of tackle one section at a time.
Maybe even keep those sections, if we decide to, run with these 4 categories like they have here, but make those 4 categories available in each entry level, advanced, and specialized, even if we wanted to take it to that further detail.
The further you drill down, and I think you should have the 5th one that isn't even on here is the safety. And you could start
Make
with the
that its own
safety
separate
section
category.
and then break down what the programs are. Everybody could put in their safety programs that they feel they need so that we can kind of generalize them for a teaching line. I can't use my tow motor training for everybody because I may have lift trucks, somebody might have side loaders, other people have walk behinds. So you can't really get into all the specifics, but for schooling, but you can teach them some of everything. And this way you can combine them together and get a good program for teaching out of it.
Mm-hmm. I guess I would just like to pose also another question. I do see that we do still have Gerald on the webinar here. Gerald, I know in just sort of analyzing some curriculum processes and walkthroughs like this, I know Cummins is currently also looking at, or has started with Jamestown Community College, the MSSC. I don't know if you have experience with that, or if that's just been Lori Jafarjan, Gerald. So sorry if I'm putting you on the spot here, but just wanted to also bring that up as it pertains to, a nationally recognized set of credentialing that does have a lot to do with industrial equipment technology.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can, Gerald.
Oh, okay, sorry about that. Just going to type, yeah, I'm well aware of the MSSC program. Worked with Lori on that over a year now to get that rolling here. That makes sense?
Yeah. I just would you be able to elaborate a little bit as to maybe some of the core competencies or how it could potentially relate to the work that we're doing here with analyzing the industrial equipment technology curricula with JCC?
Basically, I think everything you have outlined here is in the MSSC program. I don't know if folks are familiar with it or not, but Cummins has used that in other facilities. And we were looking for good, basic introduction. What can folks get? And give them core competencies. And the MSSC program is a 120-hour course, computerized, self-taught. Every 30 hours, instructor comes in for 4 to 6 hours, and they'll test them on the previous 30 hours. And there's different levels. There's blueprint reading, electrical safety. There are soft skills. There is gauging. There's hands-on. How to read a micrometer. There's basic tooling and understanding of tooling. So it's also interactive. So, for example, they can take on the computer, they can take a pair of calipers, move over a block, move the calipers to the block, and pick off a dimension. And it's very interactive, and we are in our second class on this. And I think we put 10 to 12 people through the first one, another 10 to 12 here in the second one that just got started. And it is a very good, very basic, gives people fundamental skills to move into other areas. So I think that is very good. And it's also nationally recognized. You don't have to really go off and develop anything on your own, which is how we started this, was we were trying to go off and develop something on our own. And we ran into this, and I think it's a very good starting program for a lot of people.
Yeah, just to add on to that, Justin, that's actually through the Center for Continuing Education here, where we partnered with University of Buffalo Center for Industrial Effectiveness to bring that down to Cummins. So Gerald's correct that there's a safety component to it, manufacturing process and production, maintenance awareness, and quality practices and measurement. So it's a combined. There are some face-to-face, but it's online work, and you really need to take a. I mean, we had a demo when we were up at UB. It's kind of 3D. It's not just kind of a click, and I mean, it's really kind of complex, and the instruction and the assignments on there it's really complex. And then in order for individuals to, they need to take exams. They're like, for example, the first one is safety, and they go through a series of trainings on that, and then they actually come to campus and take an exam on that in order to get that certification for that one specific piece.
Right, and you must pass that before you can move on to the next one.
That's correct. So obviously safety is first. So you have to pass the safety in order to go to the manufacturing process and production part of it.
It's a very good program. It gives people fundamental understanding, gives them a good cross-section. Can't hurt.
Great. Grant, do you have information that I could then send out to the rest of this group just to, you said that there was a demo. Was that demo done in person up in UB, or is there a demo?
It was done in person because at the time they were developing the curriculum, so we were in a training room and they logged into it. Okay. But I do have I have a 2-page, I'll send it to you right now, I have like a 2-page CPT, Certified Production Technician, that just explains the activities, and it kind of has some bullet points underneath each one. So. Okay, great. And I'll make sure to send that out to everybody that's on today after the meeting.
And then, also we could then make this also its own separate line item at the bottom as to, how a nationally recognized credential fits into, this pathway development that we're looking at. I don't think it fits the whole need, but, it's a piece of it.
Just a question, maybe for the academics on the phone, is if the MSSC was adapted into the existing industrial equipment tech program, how many credit hours would that equate to?
For the MSSC?
Yeah.
Well, that's something actually we just had a conversation with Jeff Tellick about this. It's very preliminary. So we received, we have like a textbook and this information less than a month ago. And what we were going to take a look at is, where these principles and where these concepts would fit into either the IET program or even the machine tool or the welding. So we just kind of got our hands on that information, Todd. So we're taking a look at where that would fit in. Or, for example, if someone took the MSSC, because it's a standalone non-credit, but again, it's 140 hours, and what would that translate to into coursework here, like the equivalents? So that's something we're preliminarily doing. The CPT, I may add, is it is something relatively new that we worked on, and the generosity of Cummins, they really saw the value in this, and they wanted to pilot it. So we did, as Gerald mentioned, our first cohort started in, I think, November, if I'm not mistaken, and they did start another one in January as well. So we're really kind of getting this off the ground with the Cummins employees to ensure that everything's working right, but they definitely want to help communicate the value of this program after they send us a couple cohorts through it.
So, Grant, what you're saying is that some of the components of it probably are already embedded in the existing program, in the existing credit offerings. So you're working with Tellick to try to figure out what components maybe are already there and what's maybe not there within the curriculum?
That's correct.
Yeah, thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Any other okay, actually we were able to locate and track down a 3-minute short YouTube video that I'm just going to bring everybody's attention to that does help explain, and then Grant, maybe you can chime in again after the video, just a little bit of the MSSC curricula that we're talking about in the program that's available. So hang on, bear with me just 1 second. I'm trying to pull that up for everybody to see. Okay, and here we go.
MSSC uses e-learning as a key part of its nationwide training program to give production technicians 21st century manufacturing skills. MSSC has chosen to partner with Amatrol to incorporate e-learning as part of the MSSC training program. The e-learning units are designed to help students develop the hands-on skills they need to succeed in a high-performance manufacturing environment. Mastery of these industry-critical skills helps students prepare for the MSSC certification assessments. The e-learning units accomplish this goal through a new type of training where students perform hands-on tasks in a virtual environment. Once connected online, the student has access from a simple menu to any of the e-learning units included in the MSSC course in which they are enrolled. The presentations are broken into small, one concept at a time pieces that include voice, text, and graphics. Each unit features large, easy-to-read buttons with tooltips so that even users with very basic computer skills can easily navigate through the software and learning tools provided. Students can learn hands-on procedures for the first time or can refresh and enhance existing skills. Basic skills, such as using the pressure gauge, are presented in a specific application. More involved procedures, such as this skill on reading precision instruments, are presented using a virtual workspace that simulates a real-world hands-on training system typically found in a lab. The virtual workspace provides menus that allow the learner to build their own hands-on setups and manipulate components. In other units, such as electrical and pneumatics topics, the students learn assembly skills by building virtual circuits that operate exactly as they would if they used real components. The student can connect, operate, and test their circuits on screen. The concepts of safe dress and safe practices on the shop floor are given a realistic feel with the use of 3D animations to display proper techniques as well as the consequences of unsafe practices. Students practice blueprint reading by evaluating various part drawings, including determining the proper line types to use, reading different types of features, and determining the actual dimension of a part from a scaled part drawing. Through a partnership with Amatrol, MSSC e-learning is leveraging these many forms of virtual technology to bring high-performance manufacturing skills to U.S. industry.
Okay, some great lobby music there as well. All right, so yeah, hopefully did that do a good job, Grant, at explaining the program?
It does, and I should preference that, I mean, maybe everyone already knows this, but this program is really for individuals with little or no manufacturing exposure or experience whatsoever. So the CPT is really kind of a foundational type of course. There are different tracks to it, though. So if you have someone that you know, maybe they've been in this manufacturing environment for a few years, like I said, the course itself is about 140 hours. 36 of that is face-to-face, and the other are online. But there's a fast track that's a 70-hour type training that it covers all of those components, those topics that we talked about, but it kind of does it in a little more accelerated model. And then you can actually, if you really have, you know, individuals have been there 5-10 years, you know, they know the safety, they know the manufacturing process, they can actually just come and take the assessments if they want to get that credential as well. So there's three components to that, I should add. Right now we're just rolling out the full 140-hour course with Cummins, just to make sure that you know, we're covering everything, making sure that people are able to pass the assessments, and if they aren't, you know, is it because the instruction, are we missing things? So as we continue to move forward, we will offer those three options because I don't know, maybe it helps manufacturers if individuals, maybe they have the background and knowledge, but if they get that MSSC certification, does that help with suppliers or something like that? I don't know. Hope that makes sense.
It would definitely help even the skilled employees that we have identify where they might have weak points.
Mm-hmm.
And new employees as well. If they took that course and went through it, they could identify where they were lacking some skills that might need further training on.
Mm-hmm.
And it also gives that current employee a credential that, you know, if
That's right.
you know, if they've been working at it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yep. Any other comments or concerns while we're still on the topic of MSSC? Okay, I just want to go jump back to, I guess, the presentation and just make sure that, we're at a good place to continue moving this work forward. I think I got from our brief discussion here today that, we don't want to necessarily synthesize the data because we're going to go in two different directions here. Well, two in the same direction, but we're going to try to use a combination of maybe this crosswalk that was provided to us from Southeast Columbus, Indiana, by at least identifying where students are getting some exposure to this, but also we could then, send this information back out to all of you, the industry leaders, to sort of help prioritize the need. And we're also going to share some of the information that was just provided from the MSSC skills identifications. That information we'll send out. We'll get more information on that to you, so everybody's aware of what that program entails and what are some of the training competencies that is pertain to MSSC. As far as moving forward for today, I also wanted to bring top of mind, and I want to make sure that the audience is viewing what I'm viewing here. Yep. Where our end goal is for all of this work. So if you look at this sheet today, we're specifically analyzing the industrial equipment technology curricula, but where we need to get as a community collaborative and as a learning system is making sure this full group understands the entire current state, and we're having these discussions about what each individual community stakeholder is doing to try to help feed the pipeline, or the so to speak, as it relates to the industrial equipment technology pathway. And I think this document that I wanted to continuously kind of put in front of us, every meeting, is something that's going to help us get there. I know it's kind of hard to see because it's supposed to be printed on 11 by 17, but what you're looking at here is the specific name of the pathway at the top. Gives some good annual average salary data as it pertains to Western New York and industrial equipment technologists. So this would be beneficial to, a student that would want to pursue an occupation like this, but also to a school counselor, to a teacher, to a parent, and so forth, the different job titles that are associated to industrial equipment technology pathway or industrial maintenance. And then it kind of goes from there and ties into the different nonprofit or co-created or organizational strategies that are worked on. And forgive me if I'm repeating this, but I think it's important. So that's where programs like Dream It, Do It, or maybe like 4-H could come in and, are having some involvement or some interactions with students to drive them in this specific direction. And this is where it really then begins to take shape as a community collective that we're all taking and sharing responsibility to driving kids into these programs, into this pathway. And then takes it and it analyzes it from, all the way back to a 7th grade level of what are we doing currently in, our K through 12 facilities. We have currently already populated on here Jamestown High School, their academy model. That's going to fit nicely with what we're trying to get accomplished here because they do already have a pre-engineering and manufacturing academy. Once we sort of get to a point where it's been established that the curriculum is meeting the needs from a JCC standpoint, and we've identified what those needs are, we can then hand that information back to our school systems like Jamestown High School to work with them to see how they can integrate it into their curriculum, into their programs, and so forth, and trying to work it back from there. Same goes for BOCES and PTech. Unfortunately, Bill Smock from PTech was not able to jump on the call today, but I know they're very interested into seeing what culminates from these meetings because they hear the need as well and are interested in potentially maybe looking at seeing if there would be ways to incorporate industrial equipment technology as a pathway for PTech in the current program that's already in existence there. And so forth. So that's how this document, it speaks to a lot of different audiences. It takes continuous communication in order to develop, and it's going to keep us kind of honest too as well, because if you look at the right-hand side, It highlights the shared measurements. So here's where we can kind of highlight, maybe, how many students did Dream It, Do It impact on the past, annual year? How many current students are in the Jamestown High School academies, and at what grade level, and how do we how many kids are going to be graduating from that academy, and so forth. And that might be some low-hanging fruit for Jamestown Community College student recruitment team to go after and try to get enrolled into this program once it's well established. And how do we kind of collectively, from an employer standpoint, help emphasize the importance of the need and so forth. So I think I just wanted to make sure that everybody is keeping aware that this top of mind, and this document is going to help us try to get there. And this is where I hope to fully get as we work through these topics. So with that, I mean, if we're kind of comfortable with moving forward, going in both directions, I'll compile some more stuff. You're probably going to get another survey from me that will help us with a rating system. Gene, I will provide you the information of the current feedback that we already have, and we can kind of work off of that crosswalk document, and I'll let you to sort of reflect on that and check off where those items are being covered in the courses that are already being offered. But I guess as a full group, we do need to identify another time to meet. I do want to get some feedback from you after this meeting too, as whether or not we felt that this GoToMeeting platform worked. I know in a perfect world we'd all be able to meet face to face, but we do have several folks that are coming from far away. So I do want to kind of try to navigate those abilities. But I did kind of schedule that our next meeting would be sometime in April. Probably towards the later end of, or the beginning of April, but I'll send out a doodle poll just to confirm everybody with everybody. I think we initially were planning sort of the last week of every month, but we had to jump here to the 1st of March because that just worked for everybody's schedule. So I'll send out a doodle poll with some dates, end of March, beginning of April timeframe, and we'll get something scheduled. But in the meantime, please, pay attention to the emails that I'm sending out, because there are going to be probably some required action pieces, or at least some review pieces, so we're all up to speed on the information that everybody's talking about here. With that, I just wanted to turn it back over to everybody and just open it up just to see if there's any other questions, comments, or concerns. Let me just make sure I'm opening the chat window and making sure I've got, I did get another comment here from Mike Bolton. Sorry, Mike, just trying to work through this too. This is sort of my first facilitation meeting on GoToMeeting, but you also did mention I do agree about the exposure. When I cross-train a new employee or intern, I do not want what I'm showing him or her to be seeing for the first time. So get them ungreen, get them some exposure. So yes, we do need to identify, if first and foremost, if those kids are being at least provided some sort of exposure through this program with the core competencies that all of you identified. So that's great. Thanks, Mike, for that information. Okay, so if no one has any further comments, questions, or concerns, be ready for an email with information and next steps. Thanks, everybody, for your time, and I appreciate it. Take care.
All right. Thanks, Justin.
Yep. Thanks, Grant.
Thanks, Justin.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.